Cyber attacks, security experts and researchers have identified not less than 57 negative impacts on individuals, businesses and nations of the world. They range from threats to life, depression, regulatory fines and disruption of daily core chores in the public and private sectors of economies of the world. North Korea is currently being probed by the United Nations for cyber attacks on 17 countries. Recent reports revealed that Nigeria was attacked once, South Korea 10 times, 3 attacks on India, Bangladesh 3, while Chile suffered 2 attacks, all by North Korea. Other countries attacked once by North Korea include Costa Rica, Gambia, Guatemala, Kuwait, Liberia, Malaysia, Malta, Poland, Slovenia, South Africa, Tunisia, and Vietnam. What are the implications of the attacks on the socio-political life of a country? Is Nigeria ready in case we have a major cyber attack? My guest on this set is a security expert, former Chief Security Officer to the Minister of Power and Steel, Power in the country, former CSO to the Governor of Cross River State, and currently a consultant to so many consortiums in the public and private sector. Dodye, Arikpo, good to have you on the inside.
Thank you, Mini. Thank you for
let me
having me.
hit straight. What are the implications of a country not being at par with other parts of the world in terms of cyber attacks?
Well, I think that for us as a country, we have not carried out the necessary education of the people. We need to be able to understand the cyberspace and its issues. And in doing that, first of all, we must carry there must be a people education. And I don't think that Nigeria has carried that out adequately. We read about it, we watch it on TV, and simply because it hasn't happened to us, maybe because it happens at probably individual levels mostly, because you don't even hear organizations talk about it so much. So all you mostly hear about, they hacked into my Facebook account, or somebody hacked into my other probably messaging app. But citizen education, people education hasn't been carried out as a nation for people to actually take it seriously. And if we ever have any kind of cyber attack, a serious cyber attack, I can tell you with all certainty, Nigeria will lose a lot. Developed countries are constantly carrying out risk assessments concerning these issues and trying to mitigate cyber attacks, because it is something you can't stop, but at least you can prevent and carry out certain procedures that will help mitigate those attacks. And I don't think Nigeria is well prepared for it. I mean, I can be quoted, and I know that Nigeria is not prepared for any form of serious cyber attack if we ever have such an issue.
Harm of cyber attacks, physical to digital, economic, psychological, reputational, and societal, yeah.
Yes. So, you know, we must carry out those physical things. We must also be able to carry out some technological, update our systems. You know, I know too that one of the things that I know institutions probably like the security agencies are constantly updating some of the areas in handling security, just because of the fact that we are facing this. So agencies like EFCC and probably ICPC are all working towards stepping up. But, you know, such agencies are going to be targeted very soon by people who probably want to either steal data or actually just bring about some malicious infiltration of their systems. So you find a situation where we need to be prepared as a country, where, like I said, certain measures may be taken, whether it is through legislation, whether it is through enforcement in certain areas, so whether it is through policies and procedures that guide certain organizations, that guide government's transactions, that guide even individual access into the internet and into the computer space.
Okay, let's look at intelligence sharing. How may we strengthen capacity within the defense arm and intelligence arm in terms of policing to work together to ensure that we ward off this?
I think that one of the...
I'm looking at you now, maybe you are a consultant, for instance, and you are approached by any of the government agencies. How would you counsel us to build our cyber wall so that in an event of an attempted attack, we block it?
Well, I think that, like you said, in intelligence sharing and all that, one of the things that we normally must do is to first, we must have a risk assessment plan. We must carry out a cyber audit. You understand, our systems must constantly go through that audit and some vulnerability tests. If you must be able to understand whether you are being attacked or not, or in fact, like I said, a risk assessment for you to be able to start planning towards that attack. I mean, you don't wait for something to happen before you do that. Okay. So such organizations in intelligence sharing must be able to sit and have, and each organization too must have a job description for a cyber security expert who handles those, and tools must be there to help that person work, the right tools. And so each organization must have such cybersecurity experts, and you're dedicated to handling cybersecurity. And so it's not just a general thing. And then, of course, when you look at administrative, there should be some administrative access. Like in security parlance, there's something we call the need to know principle. So, I mean, if you don't have access to certain intelligence or information, access shouldn't be given to you. And so those kind of things may be administrative. Of course, other technological means of being able to handle things like, of course, constant change of strong passwords into certain documents, strong passwords, and again, of course, making sure that the necessary legislation is set in place for those organizations within which the framework is there for them to work. But most often, the best way to handle it is to carry out constant cyber audits and vulnerability tests, and of course constant education of everybody who works within that space.
But why would an organization or a country derive pleasure from embarking on a cyber attack against another country or against an organization? What are the gains? Are they gains?
Of course there are gains. We're living in a very competitive world. Even though we no more call it the Cold War era, you see a situation where Americans are constantly accusing Russia of having influenced the elections in a negative way. And so attacks come from different countries based on sometimes economic, sometimes political, sometimes out of sheer malice. So those are the gains. If your country is attacked in some way where intelligence is gotten, maybe critical intelligence, or your data is stolen and used for probably an attack against your country or plans for your country. I mean, of course, those are economic, those could be strategic military information that you've been keeping. So those are the gains. Countries use that to gain an edge over certain other countries. It's, it's all competition these days. So if America has certain interest in a certain country, or Russia has a certain interest in a certain country, like you've mentioned with North Korea, North Korea has been fingered as a threat, So America or North Korea in the reverse will definitely want to carry out cyber attacks that give them an edge over their perceived enemy.
Okay, from your position of strength, as much as Nigeria is vulnerable, if we build capacity to show up with other nations who take pleasure in this,
yes,
by this, just the snap they go into cyber attacks on organizations, on other countries, would you advise Nigeria to also go into it, looking at it from the positive end? If you're asked, should Nigeria go into cyber attacks in other countries, will you advise that?
A cyber attack is not legal. As a security man, I can't come and start telling the federal government or my own security organization to carry out a cyber attack. They know what to do to get intelligence or to access information from other countries if they want to do that. But I know that cyber attacks from nations happen through most of the times their intelligence organizations. Okay. So in advising Nigeria on what to do, I'm sure that Nigeria knows what to do if they decide to carry out that. I won't be the one prescribing.
Okay, within the confines of talent hunt, say maybe creative arts, football, there's this word they call catch them young. Do you think if cyber education is put in the nation's curriculum right from kindergarten, primary, secondary, up to the tertiary level, not just waiting until you gain entry into the university, people will get more conscientized ahead before it gets too late?
I think it's something we need to do. If you hear about the kind of exploits, I would call it, that certain young Nigerians are making in computer systems, of course, on the negative end, you wonder sometimes how these so-called hackers and the people who will here rob or defraud people through the internet, what kind of brains they have to do this. Most of them didn't study computer science in the university. So it goes to show that there's actually a skill and a talent that certain Nigerians possess. And so I think for me that these are things that we need to talent spot, as we call it in the security. Talent spot these people who are obviously gifted in these areas and use them for the betterment of the country. Probably employ them. I mean, those days I remember we heard, it didn't happen in our time, when we were told certain companies used to go to universities and then employ straight from universities, because you are going to go and know and find out exactly what this person is gifted in or what this person is good at, and employ them based on the need assessment you may have carried out in your industry. Mm-hmm. So if for instance, security agencies and other organizations, or even government as it were, sets up a need analysis and they figure that, oh, there's a need assessment rather that we've set up and we need certain kind of brains, of course, the best thing would be to harness these young ones, who's, like I said, we are living a digital age. Yeah. Analog is gone, so the kind of things that my young son will do these days on a laptop, I mean, sometimes I'm asking, who taught him? And we have this, it's everywhere, it's on the Nigerian streets. If you go to what we call computer villages and see what some of those boys there do, if you ask them, because I've gone to fix my phone one time, I had an issue. And I mean, the dexterity with which the boy carried out the repairs, I asked him, did you learn this in a school? And he said, no. He learned it from somebody, but I said, oh, come, you need to pass on this kind of knowledge to somebody else. So these people exist all over the country. We're a nation of more than, we're talking about 200 million. And there are lots of these boys around. All, like I said, we need to do is talent spot them and use them for the, it's not about education and certificate, because we pay sometimes more attention to that. But we use these boys to do what we need to do. The Zuckerbergs of this world, and what education did they really have? So I think we've not really harnessed the potential of our young ones, especially the ones gifted in this area, because we can use them for a lot. Let's
spotlight the private sector. Do you think the private sector in Nigeria, looking at the banks and other maybe fintech industries, are they ready at all for it?
Well, I think a few.
Because they just have computer units and that's all.
No, I think there was a time I heard, I'm not sure, that a bank had an issue, and I know a few banks from the little knowledge I have. I'm not certain about what I'm saying, but at least I know that any serious bank right now would have certainly upped their systems, considering all the attacks we are now facing. And you know, one of the things is that cybercrime is constantly evolving. You know, there are tools everywhere these days, easily to purchase. And so it's a dynamic situation. You fix one today.
Every day.
Yes, it's evolving. You know, recently I read in a CNN Money report that we have like 1 million malwares every day in the country or in the world. So if you have such a situation, you're going to be seeing a situation where if you're a bank or an organization that offers service, public service especially, then you just have to up your game. Otherwise, if it doesn't tell well of your organization if such an attack hits you and you have to lose a lot of money or probably information.
Okay, do we need to wait until we get a phenomenal major attack before we do something in Nigeria?
No, that's why I said that. We don't need to wait. That's why I'm
because
saying
it looks as if we are just maybe just waiting. We are not doing
well, it's unfortunate, like I say, but the private sector must take a cue from what's happening abroad. Sometimes these things are not necessarily driven by government. Private sector can influence government in the way where they push for such things, education to happen, such procedures and policies to be entrenched in legislation or government orders. That way everybody is carried along. Because sometimes you just need that push of government to make everybody realize that, we might face attack and we don't need to wait, because we're living in a global situation and world right now. So whatever affects America affects Nigeria. So we need to start taking proactive steps to do that. Like I said, one of the things we just must do is to constantly check what exactly do our people know about this. We need to let people know. Do we now employ ways of education? Do we now insist on certain procedures and policies to be followed, either in government or government dealings or organizations? So all those things must be put in the right perspective to help us prepare on time.
Okay. Dodye, Arikpo, security expert, it was nice having you on Insight.
Thank you very much.
We hope and believe maybe proactive steps will be taken, because it is absolutely clear that, like you say, how many million malwares?
1 million
every day.
From what I hear, what I read from CNN.
It's an open-ended challenge to every country. All you need to do is to build up your capacity in case of a cyber attack. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Up next on Insight is the